So now we'll create a program, a report program on the custom tables, whatever we have created till now. Okay. So we've created some custom tables, right? Based on employee data, employee master data, department data. So first we'll create one program. So to understand how we are going to select the data and how we are going to display the data in the report level. And then we'll go into different standard tables. We'll start working on different standard tables. Let's create a program. So our requirement is to display which employee belongs to which department. Okay, which employee belongs to which department. That is what our requirement. Will display that data as in a report format. Okay, this is my program name. Always provide some meaningful name for the programs. What is the next step? Tell me the navigation to create the program.
Create
You have to click on create, provide description,
title, description.
title. Mm, Okay, and then type
Type
as executable
executable
program.
program.
Click on
Save.
save. So we'll start using proper package and transport request. My package is Z001. Save. And this is not my transport actually. Someone has created. Let's create a separate transport request for my program. Okay. Now, in few cases, we need to provide the project. Okay. In some projects, right? We should provide the project because for a single client, for the same client, there will be many projects are going on, right? One project is related to some SD module, the other project might be related to some finance module. So in general, we assign in some projects we assign it to a specific project, transport project. Okay, but here it is not required. So click on save. My transport request is created. Now I am assigning my program to this transport request. Okay, click on continue. So my program is ready. Yeah, and all of you know that the first statement of the program should be report and report name. Okay, here you can provide purpose of the program, like just like some functionality description, why we are creating this report and what is the functionality of this. Okay, okay. Now, now what is my requirement? To display employee department data, right? So to display employee department data, so I may use shall we use parameters as inputs? Okay, we'll do one thing. First, we'll select all the data without using any inputs. We'll select all the data, whatever the data available in the table. Okay. Before starting our program, we have to go through some mandatory events in the report program. Okay. We call them report events. Please make a note if you are okay. These are called report events. These are very, very, very important in report programs. Okay. So the events which we use in report program, I'll explain one by one. The first event, the first event which calls the program is a load of program. This is the first event which will trigger when you execute any specific program. When you execute the program, what is the first event that will trigger? What is the first event that will trigger?
Load of project.
Load of program is the event that will trigger, but this will trigger in background. Okay, we don't need to use it in the program, but it will automatically trigger whenever you executed the program. It will load all the program resources automatically. Okay, it will load all the program resources automatically. This is the first event that is going to trigger load of program. And again, we are not using it in the program. It will automatically trigger. Okay, we don't need to use it in the program. So it will load all program related resources. Okay, the next event is initialization event. What is the next event? I'll comment this. What is the next event?
Initialization.
Initialization event. So what is the use of this initialization? What is the use of this initialization is to pass default values to selection screen inputs. What are the selection screen inputs? If you use parameter statement, it will create some input options, right? User input options. So to pass any default values to those user inputs, what is the event we use?
Initialization.
Initialization event we use to pass the default values to the selection screen inputs. Okay. So when this will execute, this event will execute before displaying the selection screen. What is selection screen? What is the selection screen?
Where we give all the inputs.
Where the input fields will display, where the user where the user can enter the inputs. That is the selection screen. So to pass default values. So whenever the user execute the program, the input should populate with some default values. So for that, what is the event we use?
Initialization.
Initialization event. So let's try how we are going to pass the default values. Let's define one parameter. I'll take employee ID. What is this I'm taking here in type? What is this? So I'm defining one parameter for employee ID, type ZDemo EMP ID. What is this ZDemo EMP ID?
We have created a
Data
table.
element.
Yes, this is a data element, right? Earlier, how we defined? We defined using length and type C, right? Now you don't need to worry about what is the type of the employee ID and what is the length of the employee ID. You don't need to think about it. Just go to the table where you have that employee ID field. Check what is the data element they are using for employee ID. Just copy that data element and use here to define your parameter, right? Now whatever the type, length, properties applicable for this data element, they will be automatically applied to this parameter. Okay, clear? Going forward, we are going to use data elements only to define any variable or parameter. For example, to define the variable, what is the statement? What is the statement to define the variable? Data lv underscore empid, and type, what is the type we can use here? Data element. Okay, clear? Is everyone clear? So instead of type length, we are going to use data elements to define the variables and parameters. Now activate it, execute it. So I'm able to see a user input. Okay, what is required? It is displaying the technical name. Instead of this technical name, I have to provide some label. Where can you provide that? Where can you provide a name, a proper name for this label parameter? You have to tell me, then only I'll continue the class. Where can you provide selection text or label for this technical name, parameter technical name? You have already practiced this when we have created the basic programs.
Sir,
Go to
text elements, selection
text
test,
elements and selection text.
selection test.
Here you have to provide the description or label for that parameter technical name.
Employee ID.
Activate it. Go back. Now let's check. So it is displaying some field label. Now, so I want to provide some default value. Whenever I execute the program, it should display some default value here in the user input. So what is the event I am going to use for that? Initialization event equal to some 100. I'm passing the
Hard code
value.
100.
Okay. Since it's a character type, employee ID is a character type, I'm passing the value in single quotes. Activate it. So when this event will trigger before displaying the selection screen, right? So it is triggering before displaying the selection screen and it is populating the value to the parameter, correct? Is everyone clear? So let's keep a breakpoint here, the initialization event, and execute. Debugger is triggering before displaying the selection screen, right? And it is populating value. Okay. We can also, let's comment this. We can also pass default values here in the parameter. Please observe carefully using a default keyword 100. Using default keyword, I can also pass default values. Execute. It is working, right? I'm able to pass the default value, right?
Yeah.
Then why we need a separate event? Why we need a separate event? Is it really required? Since I'm able to pass default values here, the parameter itself, do we really need a separate event for that? Do we need it or not? Tell me, please, what is your expectation? Do we need this event or not? Since we are able to achieve the same functionality here in the parameter declaration itself, do we need a separate event?
No, sir.
Oh no, sir.
Okay, so no, okay. So why we have a separate event? Since we are able to handle default values in the parameter itself. Sometimes, is it a direct hard-coded value or not? Constant value or not? This 100, or is it a calculate? Is it some calculated value? This is not a calculated value, right? This is some constant value. Okay, whatever you provide, you are providing 100, and it is not going to be changed. Let's say there is a parameter, there is an input field which needs which we need to provide some calculated input. Some calculated input. Okay. For example, let's take another parameter. What is DOJ? Date of join. What is the field name for date of join? What is the data element for date of join? The table you can find it. ZDemo DOJ. Let's say I have to provide some default date in the input, but that is not. If it is a constant value, you can provide like this. For example, sy hyphen. What is sy hyphen datum?
Tabix, sir.
What is sy hyphen datum? What is this? Sy hyphen datum is a
System date.
system variable for date. So it contains current system
System
date.
date.
Current system date. Okay. So let's see how it will work. So it will populate the system date, current system date in the parameter, right? 13/12/2022. What is the alternative? You can also provide like this in the SAP's internal date format, 2022 12 13. Okay. You can also pass like this. But if you pass the system date, if you execute today, it will display today's date. If you execute tomorrow, it will automatically display the tomorrow's date. Okay, because this system variable sy-datum contains current system date. Okay, execute the program. So looks like we have to use single quotes. Date is also one of the character type. For date also you have to use single quotes. Execute. So it is displaying the date, right, as a default value, so that user can just execute the program. You don't need to enter all these inputs. Correct. So we are able to achieve these default values using parameter itself, right? Using default keyword. Do we need a separate event initialization? Let's see why this event is required. Okay. Here I am providing some constant value, and every day whenever the user executes, it will display the same data. Or if you use system date, it will display the current system date, correct? But in some cases, I have to pass some calculated value. That is current system days, current system date minus 10. I want to automatically populate default date as past date. That is 10 days past date. Can we do that calculation here? For example, sy datum, this date minus 10 days. Is it going to allow here this calculation? It's not allowed.
No.
It's not allowed. This calculation is not allowed. You can use some constant values, but calculated values are not allowed in default statement. For that reason, we are using a initialization event. It's a special event. Here you can do calculations. Here you can do select statements, and here you can write any kind of ABAP coding like loops, read statements, and populate the default values. By doing any type of calculation, you can get the default value and populate it to the parameter. For example, let me remove this. What is my requirement? For the date field, date of join, I want to populate past 10 days date automatically. Okay, how can I get the 10 days past date from today? What is the system variable for today's date, current date? sy hyphen
Data.
Datum, size datum.
minus 10. It will automatically populate 10 days past date in the parameter. Execute. 3rd December 2022. Correct? It is populating the 10 days past date, right? 03/12/2022. Today's date is 13th. Correct? Similarly, if you want
Yes,
to
sir.
populate some future date, use plus 10 days. Okay? Clear?
Okay. Yes.
Similarly, you can also write select statements here. Everyone clear? So is this initialization event is required or not?
It is required.
It is required. Whenever we need to pass some calculated values, the initialization event is required. Okay? It is a very important interview question. Okay? So they'll ask how can you pass default values to the selection screen inputs? And you can say using default statements, or you can also say, so we can use initialization event. The next question what they are going to ask is why we need a separate event since we can pass the default values using default keyword. Then what is your answer? To pass the calculated values or to write the select statements, we need to use a initialization event. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir.
Now the next event is at selection screen. What is this at selection screen event? This event is to validate the
User input.
inputs. So we are providing an option for the user to enter the input. We don't know, user can enter anything, right? User can enter anything. We should not allow incorrect inputs, right? For that, what we need to do? We need to do validation. It is common in any application and in any programming language. Okay? This validation is very common in any programming language, right?
Yes.
This validation is very common. Let's take your Gmail. When you open the gmail.com, there is an input, right? To enter the ID.
Could not find your Google
Is it,
account.
is it going to allow this any value? Is it going to allow
No,
any
sir.
value?
No.
It is going to allow only valid input. If you enter only valid input, then it will validate whether that ID is available in their database or not. If it is there in in their database, then it will allow. If it is not already there in their database, it will raise a error message. Could not find your Google account, right? So this is the selection screen for Gmail. In our selection screen, also we have a user input, right? Employee ID. Before going to process, before going to execute the program, what we have to do? We have to validate the user inputs, correct? We have to validate the user inputs. What is the event for user inputs validation?
Let's selection.
At selection screen. Okay. So sequence is very important. Okay. You have to use at selection screen after initialization only. So when this will trigger, when this at selection screen event will trigger, is it before displaying the selection screen or after displaying the selection screen? So this at selection screen,
After displaying the selection
yeah,
screen.
this event will execute after displaying the select screen. Once user is entered the input and click on execute, then this event will trigger. When execute the program, I'll show you. Now when the user click on execute or F8, now that event will trigger. Okay, now that event will trigger and validate the inputs. If user enters the valid inputs, then it will proceed further and execute the program, right? Now, how to validate the user inputs? There are two types of validations. How many validations are there? Two types of validations. Let's say employee ID is a mandatory input. Let's say employee ID is a mandatory input. Let's say let's go back to the Google application. I'm not entering anything. It is blank, right? I'm executing. Is it allowing? So I did not enter
No.
any email address and I'm clicking on next. What it is saying?
It's displaying a pop-up. Enter an email or phone number.
It's not a pop-up, it's an error message. Okay.
Error
Enter
message.
an
Error
email
message.
or phone number. So there is no value. That's why this error message is raised, right?
Yes,
Because there
sir.
is no value. And okay, I'm entering some value. Click on next. What it is saying? I've entered the value. Then what it is saying? It is validating that value. Is it a correct value or not? Right?
Yes, sir.
Then it is raising another message. Could not
Couldn't
find my
find your
Google account.
Google account.
So we have two types of validations. Whether user entered at least some input or not. If user entered some input, then what we need to do? We need to validate whether that input is a valid input or not. Okay. We have to check whether there is some value, at least some value are there, not in the input. If there is some value and we have to validate that value, is it a proper value or not? Okay. So how to check? First check we'll do if there is at least some value entered by the user or not. How can you check that? If P underscore EMP ID is initial. Is initial. Is initial mean what? What is the meaning of is initial? Initial means empty, nothing. There is nothing. If there is no value, if P underscore employee ID contains no value, then what you need to do? If there is no value, what you need to do? What happened in the Google if you don't enter any value and execute?
Pop up the error message.
It is displaying the
It
error
was
message, right?
displaying the error message.
What is
Yes,
the
sir.
condition here? If P underscore email is initial, then display this error message. Enter an email or phone number. Correct? So what is the condition here? If P underscore employee ID is initial means if employee ID is blank, user did not enter any employee ID, then what we need to do? We need to display the error message, right?
Error message.
We need to display the error message, right?
Yes.
Is initial means what? You have to understand this because this is very important. You are going to use very frequently. Is initial. What is the meaning of is not initial?
Some value is there,
Not initial means there is some value.
not
Okay.
equal to 0.
Not initial means there is some value. It is not empty. User entered some value. Is initial means
Empty.
is initial
Empty.
means it is empty. Okay. It is same wherever we are using is initial is not initial. Initial means if that particular object is empty. Is not initial means okay. If there is some value. Okay. We apply the same on internal tables also. Okay. Internal tables, variables, work areas. Okay. Is initial is not initial. What is the statement to display the messages? Message. Please make a note. What is the statement to display the messages?
Message.
Message is the statement to display the messages. Message. Type your message in single quotes. Enter
Valid. Enter the value.
employee
Valid.
ID. What type of message it is? Is it a success message, error message, warning message? What type of message?
Error message.
We have to display the error message, right? Type capital E. What is the capital E? Capital E means error. Error message. Display it as error message. So whenever the error message is displayed, right, it will stop the program processing. It won't proceed further. It will just stop there. Okay. Let's check how it will work. So what is the statement to display the messages?
Message.
Message. In message, we have different types of message types. That is E error, S success or status, W for warning, I for information, and A for append, and X for system exception. So these are the different types of messages available. So depends on our requirement. We are going to display a relevant message type. Okay. Let's check one by one. Now execute. What I'm saying, when we use the error message, what will happen? It will stop the program processing. It won't proceed further. Okay. But when we use status or success message, yes, type yes, it will display the message and proceed further. It won't stop the program processing. If you use S, W or I. But the three types, right? E, A, X. These are all for errors. It will terminate the program immediately. Okay. But there is slight difference between E and A, X. I'll display. Okay. I'll let you know one by one. Execute the program. Sorry, activate the program. Since I am providing some default values, there is some value, right? I'm removing the value, user input. Now execute. What it is saying?
Enter employee ID.
Enter employee ID. So it is stopping here. Let's keep a breakpoint. Execute. Now what are all the events executed till now? Tell me. Now I am in the selection screen. What are all the events already executed?
Initialization.
Yeah, first load of program is executed in background, then initialization also executed. Now, when I click on execute, what is the next event that is going to be executed? When I click on execute, what is the event that is going to be executed?
At selection screen.
At selection screen. What is the purpose of at selection screen? To validate these inputs. Okay, whether they are proper inputs or not. I am removing this. Execute. It is triggering which event?
At selection
At
screen.
selection screen event. We are in at selection screen event. Take employee ID. Is there any value in it? Is there any value in
No,
employee ID?
no.
Employee ID is blank. So that it is initial. Is initial is true, right? F5. So it is executing that message. F8. Right?
Yes, sir.
Now let's execute without with some values. Execute. Now there is some value, right? In employee ID. Now is initial is false. Now it's not going into the message. Okay? Clear? Similarly, to validate the date of join, what you have to write? Another if statement in the same at selection screen. If p underscore doj is not initial, sorry, is initial. Is initial means if it is blank, what we need to do? We need to display the error message. Enter date of join. Like that, you have to validate every individual input. Clear? Is everyone clear?
Yes, sir.
So I can also validate like this. I have a condition. I have a condition that I don't want to allow date greater than some value, some date. How can you write that condition? If p underscore doj is initial, then raise the error message. Else if p underscore doj is or p underscore doj is
Greater
less
than.
than sy hyphen datum. What I am saying, if the date is less than the current system date, I want to raise some error. In this case, do we have a value or not in p underscore doj in else condition, in else if condition?
Yes, sir.
When the controller will comes to this else if condition, if the first condition is false, that means if there is some value, then it will come to else condition. And then if there is some value, I am validating that value. Is it a proper value or not? How I am writing the validation? If date of join is less than the system date, then I am raising some error message. I'm raising some error message that date of join should be the current date. Okay. If it is less than system date. Now let's see how this will work. DATUM. Now execute. Keep a breakpoint here. So let's keep the inputs as it is. Is it a correct input as per our validation? 3/12/2022. We are saying that if it is less than system date is 13th, right? And we should raise a error message. There is some value in date of join F5. Oh, sorry, F5. Date of join is this and system date is this. Okay. So date of join is less than the system date. That's why this message is executing, right? What it is saying? Date of join should be the current date. So please have some validation I am writing. Okay. Because I am doing system date minus 10 here. That's why the date is less than system date, right? Then it is displaying the error message. So that what are we doing? We have to check whether there is some value or not. What is the other type of validation? We have to validate whether that
Valid.
value is a proper input or not, valid input or not. Correct? Now tell me, how can you validate the employee ID? Whether that value is a proper value or not? How can you know? So let's say I've entered some 700. Now tell me, how can you validate is it a proper employee ID or not? Can we enter any number as employee ID?
No,
Sorry, what?
no, sir, we cannot enter.
No. So every company has their own employee IDs, right?
Yes, sir.
Within specific range. So in
Yes,
our example, what are the allowed employee IDs? Whatever the employee records available in the employee master data. Please remember, the value should be available in the master data. Then it is a valid value. Otherwise, it is not a valid value. Let's go to our employee master table. ZDemo employee is our employee master table, right?
yes, sir.
So only these are the valid employee IDs. 100, 101 and 102 till 106, right? So these are the only valid employee IDs. Remaining are not at all valid employee IDs. So whenever a user enters the invalid input, we have to raise error, right? So this employee ID is not available. Please select proper employee ID. In the Gmail example, how they are doing that validation? If you enter any junk value like this, they will check this value with their database table. is this email ID available in their master table or not, right? If it is available in their master table, it will continue. Otherwise, it will display the error. How can you validate here in our example? If p underscore employee ID is initial, then raise this error message. And then we have another scenario, right? And it is not initial. There is some value, or we write it as a separate statement, or we'll write here else if p underscore id is not initial. If there is some value, then we need to validate that value. We should not allow it, right? Whatever the value user enters. If user enters some value, the first validation will be successful. This validation, his initial check will be successful because there is some value. What is the next level validation?
Whether it is correct or not.
We have to validate whether it is a correct value or not. How to validate the employee ID? We have to check whether this employee ID is already available in the database table or not, right?
Yes.
This is the employee master table, right? ZDemo employee. We have to validate whether that employee ID is available in our ZDemo employee master table or not. How can we do that? How can we check the table entry? For that, we have to write select statement. Okay. For that, we have to write select statement. Select. Do we need to write select single or select? How many employees we are validating here? One employee or multiple?
Multiple.
Multiple or one employee?
Multiple.
Multiple.
Here we are validating only one employee at a time. How many employees you are entering in the selection screen?
One employee.
Single
Whatever
input.
the user input, that employee only we are validating. Okay. Here user entered employee ID 100. Then we are going to validate that employee ID 100 against the table. Is that employee ID 100 available in the table or not? Now we are validating only one employee here. Select single. We need to use select single. What is the field name, employee ID field name in the table?
EMP
EMP From which table?
ZDemo employee.
ZDemo employee. Into, we are selecting only one field. Do we need a variable, work area, or internal table in this example?
Area.
What is
Work area.
what we need?
Work
Work area,
area.
variable, or internal table. We are selecting only single field.
Work area.
So work area contains single record, one or more fields. Here in this example, variable also suitable. We don't need a work area because we are selecting only single field, right? Here, variable is also suitable. Okay. How to define a variable? First, we have to define the variable, right? Before going to select like this. Data lv underscore emp id. What is the type? What is the type you have to use? Same type. Whatever the data element available in the table, you have to use same type. Okay. Now use that variable here into lv underscore emp id. What is this where condition? I am asking the select statement. Select a single record with employee ID. I need only employee ID field from this table and keep that value employee ID field value in lv underscore employee ID variable where that employee ID equal to whatever the employee ID entered by the user. This is the where condition. Using where condition, I'm saying that, okay, please select a specific employee ID which is entered by the user. Employee ID equal to P underscore employee ID means parameter value. Whatever the uh, whatever the value entered by the user, right? Then how can you know that select statement is successful or not for the value you provided as input?
SY sub RC.
Apache is equal to 0.
Sy hyphen sub rc equal to 0, then it is successful. Do we need to raise error if it is successful? Select statement is successful. What do you mean if select statement is successful? This employee ID is there in the select table. This ZDemo employee ID table. So whatever the employee ID entered by the user is available in the ZDemo employee master table. So do we need to raise the error message if it is already there in the table?
No.
No.
No, right? It is a valid employee ID. Sub rc equal to 0 means, okay, this employee ID is available in the master table. It is able to select that employee data into LV underscore employee ID. Then we don't need to raise any error message because it's a valid employee ID. If sub rc is not equal to 0, then okay, this specific employee ID is not available in the ZDemo employee table. That means it is not a valid value. That is an invalid value. We have to check for not equal to 0. Then raise a message valid employee ID. Okay. What is the type? Type E, capital E. Always remember, don't give small letters in the type. Check the syntax. Activate. Now I am removing this -10. Yes, it is. I'll populate always the system date so that this validation will be successful. Okay. Now let's execute. Now execute. It's not raising any error. Let's enter some 700. It is raising error message, right? Enter valid employee ID. Why? Because this employee ID 700 is not available in employee master table. Correct? Let's keep a breakpoint here. Execute. Let's change the employee ID to 700 and execute. Where is the controller? Now let's check. Now my controller here is in employee ID. Is there a value in it? There is some value 700. F5. So it is going to the else part. It is executing the select statement. What is the input we are providing for the select statement in where condition? Where employee ID equal to whatever the value entered by the user, that is 700. We are passing that and press F5. Select statement is executed. What is the sub RC? What is the sub RC value?
4.
4. That means select statement is not successful. Do we have any value in LV underscore EMP ID? LV underscore EMP ID is blank. There is no value because there is no employee ID. So that's why it did not select any value from the database table to the variable. Okay, then sub RC not equal to 0, right? Then this error message will be executed. Clear? So how many types of validations are there? First validation is, what is the first validation we have to do? Whether if it is a mandatory parameter. So not all parameters may not be mandatory. Okay. So if it is a mandatory parameter, what we have to check first? Whether there is some value available in that parameter or not. If the value is available, what is the next step? We have to validate whether that value is a valid value or not. Right? How can you validate the value? If it is date or
Select.
some other values, you can do like this by using some conditions. If date of join is less than system date or greater than system date, like that. If it is a value like employee ID, department ID, material number, these kind of values, we have to check that value is available in that master data or not. If it is employee ID, check that employee ID is available in employee master or not. If it is a department ID, check that department ID is available in department master table or not. Okay, you have to check against the database table, master database. Okay, if it is a valid value, that should be available in the table. If it is not a valid value, we cannot find that in the table, and then raise the error message. Clear? Is everyone clear?
What happens when we use write statement instead of message?
If you use write statement, it won't stop the program processing. Okay, it will continue the process. It will execute the further statements. Okay,
Okay.
write statement is used to display the output. Please remember, write statement is used to display the output, not the message. Okay,
Okay.
clear?
Yes.
So success or failure, we display it through messages, not through write statements. We display the output to data using write statements. Clear?
Yes.
So for example, when you are doing some recharge to your mobile, so success or failure will be a message. Recharge is successful or recharge is failed. That is a message. But whatever the data available, right? The transaction ID, the date, the recharge amount, these are all these are all relevant to the write statement. They are all the outputs. Okay, they are not the status. Okay.
Okay.
Let's try with the different message types. Let's try status. I've changed the message type to yes. Execute for this employee ID validation, not this one. Remove the employee ID and execute. How it is displaying? In a green
Enter
color
and
checkbox, it is displaying. Even though you've executed this message, it won't stop the program processing when you are using yes. It is for success messages, success status. Okay, it is not for failure status. It won't stop the program processing. Let's try E. E will stop the program processing. I'll give you one small example. Let's use some write statement here. So what I'm saying, error message should terminate the next program processing, right? It should not go to the further statements, right? If that is true, this I am next should not execute. Correct? For error message, let's execute. Remove the employee ID. Execute. For state success message, go back. Is it executing or not? Even after executing the success message, the right statement is executing, right? The controller is going to the right statement. Correct?
Yes.
Now let's change it to E. I kept a breakpoint at write statement. Please observe. Now ideally it should not trigger. Breakpoint should not trigger. Execute. Remove the employee ID. Execute. Is that breakpoint triggered?
Yes.
It is not triggering, right? Breakpoint is not triggering. That means it is not going to line number 23. It is stopping at line number 22 at the error message statement. It is not going to line number 23. The program processing stopped, right? Let's try W. If the debugger is triggering, what does that mean? Program is executing further even after displaying the message. Correct? Execute. Remove the employee ID and execute. Enter employee ID. What type of message it is?
Warning.
Warning. Is the debugger triggered?
No.
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 So it's not going to the next line. Let's try I. I means information. Remove the employee ID and execute. So information messages will display like this using some pop-up. Click on continue. Debugger triggered. What does that mean? Information messages won't stop the program processing. Correct? Information message won't stop the program processing. The program will continue. Right? The program execution will continue. For status, success and information I. For both of these messages, program processing is continue. For error message, program processing is stop. And what about the warning? For warning also, the program is not executing further. Right? For error and warning, the program is not executing further. Correct? Am I clear?
Yes.
Now, let's go back and observe one more thing. So we have covered the error message, success message, and information message and warning message, four message types. So depends on the requirements, we use these message types, different types of messages in our programs. Okay. Now let's try warning one more time. Warning. And let's see how it will work. You know the program processing stopped, right? When you checked it before.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it is very slow now. Maybe I'll try in a different server. It won't make any difference. Still executing. Okay. Create it. I'll create it in the local object. I'll just paste here. Check. Okay, sorry, this table is not available. try stop transaction, edit. Or we'll remove all these parameters and everything. So okay, now yeah, activate. What is the type I am using for employee ID validation? W, right? Execute. Remove the input and execute. Is it going further?
No.
No.
Just click on enter and see. If I click on enter, it is executing further, right? Clear?
Yes, sir.
When I am using warning message, if I click on enter, it is executing further. That is the difference between error and warning. Okay? Warning needs user intervention. If you click on enter, it will proceed further. That means, okay, that's okay, please go ahead. It is displaying some warning and you are ignoring that warning by pressing enter. Okay? Clear?
Yes, sir.
You are bypassing that warning. Okay, I know that. Please go and execute it. You are saying that. Okay? Is everyone clear on E, S, W, and I? E, S, W, I. These three types, right? It won't stop the program processing. But yes, for W and I, you need some interaction, user interaction. Like for W, we need to click on enter. For I, you need to click on continue in that checkbox. Then the program will execute further. But for S, it will always execute further. But for E, it will stop the program processing. It won't go to the next line. Let's try A and X. A means append. Let's try how it will work. Remove the value and execute. This is the A, type A, append. Okay? Exit. You have to exit. No other way. Program got closed. Okay? That is type A. Let's try type X. Type X is the system exception. We have already observed this. Remove this and execute. Short dump. It will raise the short dump. Where can you check these short dumps or runtime exceptions? What is the transaction code?
Four.
ST22. ST22 is the transaction code to check the runtime exceptions or this short dumps. Go to ST22, click on today's errors, check where is our program. This is our program, right? So this is the error. You can capture all message type X errors in which transaction code? In which transaction code?
ST22.
ST22. Double click on the error, go to source code extract, error analysis and source code extract. Go to error analysis. What it is saying? Short dump of error message, enter employee ID. How to correct this? They have provided some details here. And go to source code extract. It will show you the exact code, exact line where that error is happening, so that you can go and fix the error, right? So this is the line where that particular exception is rising. So in support projects, it is very common. It is very common. So you'll get some short dump. the user will send this. Okay, when I am executing so and so program, I got this short dump. Then what you need to do? We need to go and check in the ST22. So what is the error analysis and what is the source code extract from where it is raising the short dump. And you need to keep a breakpoint here, or you can, if you click on that, it will take you to the source code and you can check what is the condition here. Or you can use this ABAP. Okay, looks like ABAP debugger is option is there, not there here. Okay, debugger option is not available. If the debugger is option is available, you can also debug this. Okay, debugger is not available. Okay, you can check the source code. What is the transaction code for runtime exceptions?
ST20.
ST22.
ST22. Who are working in support projects, this is very common T code you are going to access. Whenever you got this red color screenshot, go and check ST22. What is the root cause and where it is failing? Okay, and you have to provide your analysis. Okay, because user did not enter the employee ID, that's why this error message is rising. Please correct or please enter the valid input. Please mute. Okay, now let's go back to the program. Now we're done with that selection screen, right? Validations are completed. Next, what is the event we need to use? Start of selection. What is the next event we have to use? Start of selection is the next event. Okay. What is the use of start of selection? To write business logic or the actual functionality. The business logic or the actual functionality what we are using. So what is the event we have to write? What is the event where we write our business logic? Start of selection. Here our actual select statements, actual data selections will happen after all these validations. Now write the select statement. Select. What is my requirement? I want to select employees belongs to which department. What is the suitable table for that? Employees and departments, where we have linked somewhere, right? This one, ZDemo employee department. Here you can see which employee belongs to which department. Select star from. What do you mean by select star? Select all the records with all the fields into what we need to provide. Internal table, variable or work area.
Internal table.
We have to provide internal table because we are selecting multiple records. Okay. First, you need to define the internal table, right? How can you define the internal table?
Data.
Data. For example, IT underscore emp data type. Tell me the
and
statement.
type standard table of
Standard table of this table name, whatever the table we are using in the select statement. Now use that internal table here. Select star from into table. You have to use table. Here are we using table here? Into table we are not, right? For select single, don't use table. But for internal table records, select star from database table into table, internal table, where where emp id equal to whatever the employee id entered by the user. Correct? If sy hyphen sub equal to 0, what does that mean? Select statement is successful. We are able to select some records. Correct? Sub 0 means we are able to select some records. Then display the output. Instead of write statement, we will use cl demo output. Okay? It's a class method. I'll explain in detail in the further sessions. But for now, please remember this syntax and just display and provide the internal table name here. lt underscore emp data. Okay? Check the syntax. Oh no, I think I'm in 2020 server. Let's copy and paste. Earlier I copy and pasted here. Close this. This is the 2020 server. Change it. Where I'm editing, maybe here. Check. It's not DOJ. Check. Okay, I think we have to define field. Okay, it is not LT and it is IT or LT. What we have taken for internal table declaration, IT, right? IT underscore emp data. So here I have provided the table name instead of internal table name. Select star from table name into table internal table where employee ID equal to whatever the employee ID entered by the user. Okay, it's not LT, it is IT. Activate. Now execute the program. I'll keep a breakpoint here in start of selection. So now what event will execute? When I click on execute, first at selection screen will execute. If all the inputs are validated and they are correct, then it will go to which event? Start of
initial.
selection event. Execute. Now validation is completed, no errors. Then it comes to the start of selection event. Click on F5. Sub RC equal to 0. That means we are able to select some records into internal table. How many records? How many records we are able to select? 2 records. Double click on the internal table. You can see these 2 records of the employee ID 100. If sub RC equal to 0, display. We got the output, right? Is everyone clear? Let's say we did not provide any input. Click on execute. It won't proceed further. It won't display any input. It will stop at selection screen event. It won't go to the start of selection event. Clear? So this is the sample program. we'll do more additions and we'll apply more advanced syntaxes in the next session, like inline declarations. Okay.